Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Can we have the roll call?
Commissioner Shu,
Yeah, here.
Vice Chair Kumarapan,
Here.
Chair Tom Bay,
Present.
Commissioner Stanek,
Here.
Commissioner Begor.
Here.
Excellent. Due to some system necessities, we're going to go ahead and move item number 1 to the end of this meeting, which is the chair and vice chair selection for the upcoming year. And also, due to some errors with the meeting minutes, we will also need to table item number 2 for the next meeting. And that will be it in terms of the postponements. Excellent. Awesome. So next we have oral communications. And we have an oral communications from our Fine Arts Commission. So please come on up.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time. I'm here this evening from the Fine Arts Commission to update you on a proposal that we presented to you 18 months to 2 years ago. The program is called Art in Unexpected Places. The idea was to take walls that around the city, owned by the city, that are just plain concrete walls, and paint them, generally with theme-based art. And we originally had 2 pilot programs identified. One wall at Blackberry Farm and another wall at the Sports Center. The idea at Blackberry Farm would be a theme-based mural that would include the flora and fauna and the local animals that you'd see in the park. The sports wall would probably be sporting activities, so they'd be relating to their location. We subsequently found a number of other walls that might be suitable for such art. But the program now is officially launched. It's up on the website. We've been contacting people in the FALC, the Fine Arts League, and other artist organizations in the area. We put out a general call for artists to submit their entries. So for the first program, we have decided we would do the wall at Blackberry Farm. Does that work? Okay. So across from Captain Stevens Play area, right here, there's a wall. It's 6 feet by 30 feet. And the idea here would be, the theme would be the natural habitat for the area. So local wildlife in and near Blackberry Farm includes coyote, deer, raccoons, mountain lions, squirrels, many species of birds. Flora includes sycamores, redwoods, oaks, wildflowers. And the artist that's submitting ideas is free to consider a montage or some other artistic expression. The deadline for submissions is April 17th. At that point, the Fine Arts Commission will review the submissions and interview the finalists. We want to be sure that they not only are good artists, but they have some experience, and we have some confidence that they can execute a commission this large. Once we have done that, we expect to have the wall painted by the end of June this year. We also have been identifying, as I mentioned, other walls. The success of this program will tell us whether we have a real ongoing program to help beautify the city by adding art in places that there was none. If you have any questions.
Just to confirm, the date is April 17th.
That would be the deadline for submitting drawings, some information about the artists. We do want to know about their experience and capabilities. We want to be
Excellent.
sure that anybody that we award will be able to execute the program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and we're excited to share this with the community. So April 17th is the deadline.
Yes.
Please, please be sure to apply if you are an artist
Yes.
or an aspiring one.
And all the details are on the website under the Fine Arts Commission, Art in Unexpected Places. So that would be the place to go to look for more information.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. All right, this is just a last call for blue cards that are unrelated to any of the agenda items. So this will be the only opportunity to speak on an issue that is not on the agenda. Anyone? We really like blue cards. No? I always say that, and it's just nobody gets up. Okay.
I'm going to get you.
Excellent. So we are going to go ahead and jump into, do we want to do a brief overview of the written communications, Director?
Be happy to, Madam
Excellent.
Chairperson.
Thank you.
The first thing in your packet is information from California Association of Parks and Recreation Commissioners and Board Members. Within the Parks and Recreation world, we have a lot of different organizations. Recreation supervisors get together and share concepts. The directors do, people that program for teens, et cetera, et cetera. This is an organization that is specifically for commissioners and board members. And there is membership information here in your packets tonight. We would encourage anybody that's interested in any of the programs that are offered to join the association. And there are, they do have sessions during their annual conferences and at the California Park and Recreation Society conferences. And we can give you more details about those later on. But this is just for your information. And then during the month, if anybody's interested in becoming a member of CPRCBM, just after years and years and years, I think that might have been the first time I got it right. You can just contact Whitney, and she will help with registering you as part of the association. Also in your packet, there's written communication from Sophia Badillo, and Sophia is the information there is about the Rancho Rinconada agenda item. There was some information that was submitted before the packets were made up, and so that's all included in the Rancho Rinconada agenda item section. This came in after we had already created the packets and put it online, so we've put it under written communications, but you should consider it as part of the Rancho Rinconada item. And that's the written communications.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And can you remind us again when the deadline is to submit our request to join the CAPRCBM?
Yeah, there's not a deadline for it. All year long, members are allowed to participate. I do not have, I guess the annual conference is going to be next week down in Anaheim area.
Are they still holding it?
Yeah, they are still holding it. And so I think it's too late to register for that. But typically it bounces back and forth between Northern California and Southern California, and we can get you more information about that. I've heard that it may not be up in Northern California next year due to some logistical problems with the venue that they were going to use, but we'd be happy to get you involved in some of the training. It's also very nice because then you're meeting Park and Rec commissioners, board members from nearby cities here on the peninsula, and you can find out what they're doing. If you have, I know we have items here about dog off leash area. What are they doing? And you have colleagues, and you can reach out and network through those opportunities. So we do encourage people to become part of the association.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And would encourage everyone here to join. And then we will also treat the second written communication submitted after as part of the Rancho Rinconada agenda item. Now on to item number 4, which is the receipt of the marketing report prepared by Learn, or the Learning Resources Network.
And I'm hoping, do we have Greg on the line, or? So I don't know the technology that.
Oh, hey, Greg.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Terrific.
So Greg Marcello with the Learning Resources Network was out here a few months ago, has prepared a lot of information from us. Okay, see, now I see Greg's right there. Prepared and spent a couple of days, received a lot of data about the Recreation Department or Division operations, and prepared information to help us with our marketing efforts specifically. And so he's here tonight to share the report.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for allocating the time. And let me sort of take you through some of the things that I think are most important to know from the report that I did. My name is Greg Marcello, and I am from an organization called the Learning Resources Network, or LEARN. Bill Draves and I started LEARN in 1974, and we are an association that just works with lifelong learning organizations. About 25% of our members come from parks and recreation departments. And our primary focus is what we call information that works, which means that we provide the benchmarks, the best practices, whether if it's in course programming, marketing, operations, etc. So I came on site and I did a review and provided information sort of across the board, but the focus right now in tonight's presentation is on the marketing information. And so there's 4 things that I'll talk about. Some of the positive accomplishments that I saw during the review, high-level recommendations, and then the 2 areas I'll spend the most time on are what I consider the most critical marketing actions, and then just a very quick look at an example market plan that I think would be useful for the department to utilize. So from the positive accomplishments, let me just say that it was a great visit. We got a lot of great information, terrific work being done. 5 of the things that stood out for me is 1, the department is doing a good job covering what I call direct costs, which is the marketing and production costs, even are generating revenue above that to cover administrative costs, which is really a push these days in parks and recreation to not just cover the direct costs, but also be covering administration. Not all of them, but a percentage of administration costs. The second positive accomplishment was that many of the marketing materials I looked at, I was very impressed by, and they were following what I call industry best practices. So this had to do particularly with the design of those materials. Third, one of the most important benchmarks in our industry is what we call repeat rate, which is the percentage of people who repeat from one year to the next. The benchmark is 30 to 50%. The best recreation departments are somewhere between 40 and 50%, and your department was right at the middle at 45%, which shows that good work is being done in getting people to repeat, either by the quality or the types of programming, the service, et cetera, that's being provided. 4th thing was that I was very pleased to see that you use memberships, particularly in the senior center and the sports center, and that they were being used not just as a benefit, but being used as a way to sell the services that you do to get people excited about them, but also more importantly, to get a tool to retain people so that they would continue to participate from one year to the next. And the 5th thing was I knew that before I came on site, you were making a transition to ActiveNet. And I just want to say that I was pretty impressed how quickly you got up and running and the ability to provide useful data to me, and I'm sure even more useful data going forward. So those were 5 of many positive accomplishments that I saw during my visit. At a very high level, 5 recommendations are: 1, to be really clear about why you are unique and differentiate yourself from your competitors. The second was you need to be more data driven. For example, you need to be able to target the primary carrier routes within your territory and hit them more aggressively if you want to get more people to participate. And you also need to be clear about what are most likely the next activities people are going to sign up for. And your data provides that information. Third thing is that, this is not a rule that LEARN teaches. This is a rule that's general in business, that 20% of your customers give you 80% of your business. You need to be able to identify who those best customers are. And we were able to do that with the data we provided. And then dig a level deeper and determine what we call your primary market segment. What are the clusters within the community that are really generating the bulk of your business? You can't be everything to everyone. You need to do a really good job of serving those clusters. The 4th is, although I said your printed materials were strong, you need to be following what is called the AIDA principle, which is a principle that is used as it relates to print promotions, the design of your website and the writing of your descriptions. Fifth is the importance of shifting more to integrated marketing, doing a good job with print. We've got a website, but we need to be more aggressive on the email, the social media, and video. And so we always say at Learn, there need to be 5 ways that the word is getting out. And we need to be able to do all those 5 in collaboration with each other. And then lastly, just more work being done listening to your best customers. I always say that there are 3 types of people in your community: the people who participate, the people who will never participate, and the people who might participate. The better job we do listening to the people who participate and fixing their problems and giving them things they're looking for, higher repeat rate, and the people in the middle, who the people who might participate, you've got a better job of participating. So the ability to listen to those best customers is critical. So that's high level. When it comes to the most critical, specifically as they relate to marketing, number 1, you're not spending enough money on marketing. You're spending less than 3% of your budget on marketing. The benchmark in our industry is 10 to 15%. I'm saying is you got to get to 3% and ultimately to 5%. I'm not saying that you need to fund more money. What I'm saying is you've got to reduce your delivery or production costs so that more of that money can go into marketing. So we just need to do a better job with pricing. We need to do a better job with the management of our production costs. One of the things I did talk about when I was there was your ability to do a better job with price listing and ending your prices with 5s and 9s will most likely increase your revenue by 10%. Second thing is it's better to have one centralized marketing budget that is run by the folks responsible for marketing within the department than to have each individual unit have its own marketing budget. We need to gather all those dollars together and then build a marketing budget that supports all the different areas as well as general marketing. But we need to be able to manage one budget versus each different unit having its own budget. Third thing is there just needs to be more planning. There needs to be marketing meetings. Once before every term, there needs to be a meeting where we talk about what are the strategies specific to this term, and then ultimately building the promotion campaign that's going to be followed for the term. Next is you got to ramp up your digital marketing. You're doing a good job with print, but you're not doing enough on the digital side. Learn would say that 75% of your budget, marketing budget, still needs to be spent on print, but you need to spend more staff time on digital. And so either by contracting with people who can maybe do some of this for you or repurposing staff time, we can do more e-marketing, we can do more social media. And the big piece of this is to provide content, provide information that's going to get people excited about what you're doing. Not selling your programs, but instead providing teasers as it comes to things that people are interested in that are going to drive them to your website to get more information. I would argue that it's not worth spending a penny on marketing if you don't track it. And so using ActiveNet, you've got to begin to track what promotion methods are getting people to register. So is it the catalog? Is it your e-marketing? Is it your best friend? Whatever it is. I will say that your recreation schedule should be getting a 20-to-1 or less schedule to registration ratio. So for every 20 schedules you send out there, you'll be getting at least 1 registration. And this is going to be done by targeting past participants. And instead of targeting the whole community every time, targeting the primary carrier routes that utilize your services. I do think you should consider a summer camp only schedule. Most recreation departments are very strong in summer camps, and most of the winning programs have schedules that are specific just to summer camps. The other thing regarding print pieces is that I would recommend that you mail your recreation schedule a second time. The first time you mail it, it should be in people's hands 5 weeks before classes start. The second time, and that one is mailed to a larger group, And then the second time you target it to your best participants, and they should be receiving it 2 weeks before. You want to determine what makes you unique. Why is it that your customers come to you versus going to someone else? Only they know. You need to work with them to figure it out. But once you figure it out, you have to really promote it hard. You got to remind the people who are participating why they participate, but the people who aren't, but who might, once they hear the things that are critical that make others participate, that's going to make them want to participate more. So we need to know what makes us different, what makes us unique. I would recommend that only one person write your activity descriptions. They should be between 40 and 120 words. They should follow the AIDA principle as it comes to writing descriptions. The more people who write descriptions, the more muddled the voice becomes. It is better to have one person write them than everyone write them. Just because you can program doesn't mean you can write descriptions. You need to do more with needs assessment. You need to really work listening to those best customers. You don't want to listen to the people who aren't coming, because most likely, no matter what they say, they're not going to come. But what you want to do is you want to listen to the people who are coming so you can improve what you're doing, as well as offer things that may do a better job of pulling the people who aren't participating right now. You need to do an annual experience survey to really determine the quality and customer service. I would say right now, if you were rating your quality and customer service 1 through 5, 1 is poor, 5 is excellent. If you're not getting a score of 4 or higher as an average, then most likely everything else we're talking about makes no difference. So even though you're doing maybe evaluations in other ways, once a year at least, you need to survey out to everyone and just have them score your quality and customer service 1 through 5. Also, in light of this, it's really important to be using polling and focus groups with your programming. If you want to get people to participate, you got to do 20% new offerings every year. In some cases, maybe you can't do 20% new, let's say camps, but you need to make sure that the content is 20% new and that it's being relevant. And so working with focus groups, advisory councils, whatever we may call them within the specific programming areas, this is going to allow us to do a better job of deciding what those new programs should be. All classes should be evaluated at least once a year to make sure that they're performing at that 4+ level. When it comes to some of the promoting between adult programming and your 50+ programming, I would recommend more cross promoting, because people who are in adult programming may well be interested in 50+ and vice versa. So we don't want them to be too siloed. We want to see more collaboration between those two. And I would recommend considering changing the name of Senior Center. I think as you've got the next wave of people who are going to participate in what I call lifelong learning, they're going to not be interested in the name Senior Center. They're going to be interested in some other name like Lifelong Learning Center, or maybe it's named after a person, but something that makes it more inclusive. When we say it's senior, then that defines a certain group of people. If we open it to be more of a lifelong learning center, then we're going to be having more people who are going to see this maybe as an avenue for participation. I do think it's important to produce an annual market plan. We start to work on it 6 months prior. It should be ready 3 months prior. It has 2 key components. One is the foundation, an explanation of who you are, what your vision, your mission, your values, your unique selling proposition, a listing of who your primary market segments are, what I call your proven process when it comes to your marketing model. What are the steps we take in marketing? And then historically, what's been your budget? The plan itself is made up of these components: 3 to 7 annual goals for the upcoming year as it relates to marketing. What are 3 to 7 things we're doing to improve our marketing? Our centralized budget, which is going to include how we're spending money on the way we distribute what we're doing and as it relates to each of the program areas, but the budget itself is centralized. Whatever marketing benchmarks you're tracking, the promotion to registration ratio being the most critical, but repeat rate, for example, may be another one that's important to be reporting on. And then just a listing of all the different promotion methods you're going to be utilizing. It's almost like a checklist. And then what are the actions that you're going to take to get people to repeat? So what are the things above and beyond what you're doing in marketing to get a higher repeat rate? And then what are all the individual campaigns? A fall session is a campaign, winter session is a campaign, summer camps are a campaign. And each of those campaigns would have dates and weeks prior to things starting that would be scheduled. And then who on staff does what? These next two slides are just an example of a market plan. This is one that I built with another organization, not specific in this case to recreation, but it's an example of what I mean. And this is a short version. Certainly there can be a longer plan, but in my mind, it's difficult enough for programs to build a simple market plan. But certainly the more complex we can make it, maybe the better. But if you look at this, it's a description, it's what makes us unique, it's what our primary market segments are, meaning who we serve, it's how we handle our finances. And then you can see on the market plan itself, these are the goals. This is our budget and benchmarks as it comes to our promotion dollars. Here are the promotions that we're utilizing. These are the actions we're going to take to retain participants. And then here's our overall promotion plan on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, just an example of being more detailed during Q1. And then who on staff is responsible for doing what as it relates to marketing. Normally, when an organization I work with builds a marketing plan for the first time, it is 50% effective. The second time, it's 75% effective. And by the third time, it's 100% effective. One of the things I said when I was on site is that all the things that I've mentioned here, as well as many more things that I mentioned in the whole report, I am happy to work with anyone as a group or one-on-one to implement, particularly as it comes to the market plan. I am happy to work with whoever to build and then implement this market plan. And so whatever help I can provide is certainly part of the relationship that we have. So those are the main things that relates to marketing that I wanted to share. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any, or if it's appropriate to ask. But if anyone has anything they just want to ask me specifically, feel free to email me and I'm happy to respond and provide more information or any answers you might want.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Greg, for coming and doing this deep analysis of what our department has been doing and what we can do to elevate our current marketing strategy so we can reach more community members. Before we dive into clarifying questions from the commission, if there is someone in the audience who has any thoughts on this, or even if you are a community member and you're like, I didn't even know that we had XYZ program and I heard about it recently, any feedback you might have on what we've been doing for marketing would be welcomed and helpful. The blue cards are up in the front on the right-hand side. But with that, while community members are filling out those blue cards, commission members, do we have any clarifying questions? We can jump into a bit more of a discussion. There's no active action I believe we need to take on this, but we're receiving the presentation, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I do have a few. Greg, it's awesome. And the one point I love is that, yeah, please change the name. I love to. Because when I became a member, my son was looking at it. So it's a Senior Center to Lifelong Learning Center is awesome. So thank you. A couple of quick questions. You've given the recommendations. Again, I don't want to go deep in each one of them. You may want to address all of it at one shot. Just piling on. When you come up with a recommendation, and one of the things you said, data-driven. So is there any specific finding which prompted you that some of the activities are not data-driven or should have been? Because we did accomplish a good data generation collection mechanism. That's what I see in the first slide. But I'm trying to find out what prompted you to that one. So that's one. Yeah, please.
So I would say any organization I work with that's trying to be more data-driven is doing some good work with that. But I will say that even the information that I provided by taking your data and analyzing was information you didn't know. You didn't know your repeat rate. You didn't know your primary market segments. You don't know your promotion to registration ratio. So it's information that you might have a sense or a feel for, but you didn't actually have the numbers that tied into it. Now, part of that related back to your software system in that a lot of that data had, when you had a transition and you're transitioning your software system, there was some challenges with your data. And so you were putting some of this back into place. But I do think there were certain benchmark numbers that probably weren't on your radar that you ought to be looking at. And that's what I tried to share in the report.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And the second one on the same recommendation, the AIDA principle, which I think you mentioned a couple of times. Do we follow today on it, or we need to be following so closely?
So I would say that your printed brochure I was very impressed by, and I think there's a lot of it that follows the AIDA principle. I would say when it comes to your descriptions, course descriptions, there's probably more work that could be done there. At least the website I saw at that point in time could have followed that principle a little bit better. So, and I think as you move out in your e-marketing and your social media, you also want that to follow the principle. So I think in general, I have a sense that the folks who are doing the marketing have a pretty good feel for what the look is. But I think knowing that there's a model that should be followed, I think just is going to help enhance what you're doing.
Okay, got it. And the last one, before I let the other commissioners ask questions, you talked about in the most critical action items, I think 1, 2, 3, fourth item, which you said ramp up digital marketing, contract for or repurpose staff time. In that, you also mentioned 75% of the budget will be or has to be still spent on printing. Did I get it correct? You expect the 75% to be spent, or your finding says that 70% is still on print material, not on the e-delivery?
Great question. So when it comes to your marketing budget, let's just say you got $100,000. The norm would be that $75,000 would be spent on print. The biggest mistake you could make is eliminating your print catalog. Even though you would argue that everyone in the community knows who the recreation department is, that would be the biggest mistake in the world. Any organization that has eliminated its print has seen its registrations go down. But in this world of digital marketing, it's really important that we're doing both. And so when it comes to a budget, you may spend more dollars on print, but when it comes to staff time, you're going to spend more time on digital. And one of the reasons for that is that, and this is one of the recommendations I made also, is that there are ways to ramp up or enhance the process of building your catalog or your schedule, so that it saves more time to go into the digital marketing. So you're still spending more money on it, but I think there can be greater efficiency so more time can be put into digital.
Got it. Thank you so much, Greg.
Any other clarifying questions and comments later?
So the question, thank you for your wonderful presentation, Greg. That was very informative. One quick question with regard to the most critical action items. You say that, instead of increasing the budget spent, we should reduce the production costs. So I'm kind of curious to see what you found from the production cost that was, was it orders of magnitude, or, how different is it from any other possible city that is doing the same kind of thing?
Yeah, it's another great question. I would say that normally with recreation departments, I find that not enough money is being spent on marketing. I think the assumption is, again, people know who we are, so we don't have to spend a lot of money on marketing. Mm-hmm. And so I would argue that a recreation department normally doesn't need to spend as much, say, as your community college. And they would spend somewhere between 10 and 15%. I would be saying that a recreation department really should be spending at least 5% of its budget on marketing, at least. Ideally more like 8, but at least 5. Now, in order to do that, I'm not recommending that we need to budget more money, additional dollars for marketing. I'm recommending that the staff look at its delivery costs and see what it can do to reduce those as a percentage. So if you can reduce it just by 1% and move that 1% over into marketing, that's significant. Now, I said when I was presenting, I made a comment, and it probably wasn't tied into this one, but just by going back and looking at how you list your prices, for example, you would never list a price at $105. You would list it at $125. You would never list a price at $33. You would list it at $39. So there are strategies in price listing that if you can just implement that, you will see your revenue go up by 5 to 10%, which will mean your production costs will go down as a percentage, and that money can be put into your marketing. So I'm just saying, let's be more conscious of our production costs so that we can allocate more dollars into marketing.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. And I have two simple questions. The first one, I want some clarification on the repeat rate. So what kind of thing can be considered a repeat rate? Like the same person come back for the same program, or the same person just come back for different class or different program?
That's what it is. So normally in recreation, you'll look at 1 year to the next. So you take a look at people who register in year 1 and what percentage of them as people, not as registrations, but what percentage of the people then repeat into the next year as a percentage of that first year. So for example, if I have 10,000 people who register this year and 5,000 of them repeat into the next year, then my repeat rate is 50%. So it doesn't have to be into the same program, it's into anything, as long as they come back to something.
Oh, okay, thank you. And another question is about the, you said just use poll and focus groups specific to programming area to ensure 20% new offering and updated and relevant content. I'm not clear about the 20% new offering. What does that mean?
So during a year, it's important that 20% of what we offer is new. And new is either defined as brand new, you've never done it before, or you've taken an underperforming program and you've revamped it. You've made it significantly different. And so it's really important that we're offering new things, because there's 3 reasons people don't come back. The first reason is that they have poor quality. Second reason is you offer poor service. And the third reason is there's nothing new. And so we want to make sure we're doing new. But sometimes in some areas, it's hard to do 20% new programs just because you just can't do that many. But that means that at least the content in those areas should be 20% new. The other point that's important, because this would be a mistake. Understand that I'm not saying 20% more. I'm saying 20% new. So that means there's probably some things that ought to be cut that we're doing that really is not getting the numbers or are historically canceling. And so we maybe are eliminating some things to bring in the new.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah.
Hi, this is Carol. I actually have a question for our interim director, and that is, as we receive this in the department, what are our next steps, and is there someone tasked with doing this, and is there a way to measure our progress against the particular things, like 20% new offerings or our repeat rate, and bringing that back to us so we can see our progress?
So I think, as Greg mentioned, I think part of the problem when he was first out here doing the assessments, and that was before I started, so I did not get a chance to meet him or be involved in those discussions. But my understanding is there was a problem with the turnover of the registration program, and they lost all of the previous data. And I think that slowed down the timing of the report, and we really appreciate Greg sticking with our project through all of that. The repeat rate, the unduplicated count of registrations, those are things most recreation departments on the peninsula are tracking. And we do have that, we will be able to track that information. I think a lot of the information in Greg's report is very good, very valid. A lot of it we are already doing or have started doing. As the example, the specific summer camp guide is going out in the next couple of weeks, and you'll see that at your home. It is separate than the spring or the summer guide, so you will see a duplication on that. Other cities on the peninsula have been doing that for several years. And I guess we did one online last year. This will be the first time we're doing our hard copy that's getting printed out and mailed to everybody. But, to echo Greg's point, it is one of the most important programs that we offer. And it is one that we're going to emphasize and do a better job on. I strongly believe in we need to do more in the area where Greg was saying use ActiveNet. That's our registration program. And we can do more target marketing through that. If people have signed up for example teen programs in the past, and we have a new teen program, we should be capturing those email addresses associated and sending them promotional materials straight to, if you were interested in that, you're probably interested in this. People that sign up for the 5K Big Bunny Run, it's the same target market that's interested in the Santa activities. So we need to do a better job of some of those things. So as a staff, we've gone through this. We're highlighting all of those things. With the communications department, we do have a dedicated staff member from the communications department that's in Parks and Recreation on a regular basis. Communications is also looking at doing much more digital marketing. Actually, Whitney, do we have this? Can we show this? It's on the staff computer. 1 second. Under presentations. Oh. So as I switch chairs here, so one of the things that we've done, and this is in your report, I think it's the last page of this item section, but what we've done is we've listed all of the community outreach avenues that we have. And as you can see, there's many of them. And then between our 4 major divisions, which of those areas do we utilize? And as Greg pointed out, I think his statement was during each session or before sessions begin, we need to review that and update that information. We agree with that, and there's a long list of places that we can advertise our programs. Some of them are online, some of them are social media, some of them are in print. Whether it's festivals or Groupon or our brochure that gets mailed out to every address. So all of those are listed here, and this is something that we will be reviewing on a regular basis to make sure that we are hitting our target markets.
Excellent. So we don't have any blue cards, so we can just jump into discussion should we need to.
Question for the interim director. Have we ever tracked what the repeat rate is of the Santa Clara County cities with respect to ours?
I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
I don't believe that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, that is not something we have done yet.
Okay.
There are some metrics that we've seen around, I believe, pool usage, but these are older data points. We don't have comparative new metrics right now.
Okay. And in the same line of thought, have we done any comparison, or should we be doing any comparison with regard to the production costs? Is it like some city getting it a better deal than us, or something like?
So I can't answer it, to be honest, really accurately, because I'm not 100% sure. But most of the cities on the peninsula, San Mateo County and Santa Clara County, we share all that information. Okay. And one of the things I love the most about this industry is we're cooperative with each other. We're not competitive. Mm-hmm. We share best practices. We compare brochure prices. We compare who's getting sports equipment from which different area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because we all benefit from that information. So I'm sure that there were surveys done by staff to compare who's using which printers, the quality of them, the types of covers that are used, the prices that are given out. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm almost certain that staff here does that because it is pretty much an industry standard.
Greg, I had a couple of questions. So in terms of the annual marketing plan, would you recommend that annual marketing plan be made around the annual calendar or our city's fiscal calendar?
Well, I would say the calendar that. Well, remind me when your fiscal year starts.
In the summer,
July 1.
July 1.
July 1. Yeah, normally the market plans would be built on that calendar, the July 1 calendar.
Is that what resonates with the community, or is that confusing because we're cutting the summer?
Well, remember, when you're building that plan, this is for a plan that starting July 1. And starting July 1, even prior to that, you're actually working on marketing your fall session. So your summer's already been marketed. You're already in that and at the end of that. So you would have built that into the previous year's plan.
Okay.
That's actually the topic that drives all of our finance directors crazy, that having the start of a fiscal year right in the middle of our busiest season. We've taken registrations in the previous fiscal year. We took them in April and May and June. And now we're spending the most amount of money, especially on our part-time staff, in June, July, and August. So now all of a sudden you see this huge bulk of expenses going out in the new fiscal year without much revenue to support it. And we have to remind them, don't worry, it's going to catch up in April. We're going to get the summer registrations for the next year. And so part of that goes. But I do agree with Greg that the planning for marketing, in fact, I'd even back it up a little bit to say April and May, so that we can put those dollars into the budget, which kicks in with July 1 and the budget hearings in June.
Excellent. So I had another question, Greg. One of the things that we look for in our programming that we create is making sure that we're hitting a diverse cross-section of the community. So be that ethnic demographics, age demographics, activity demographics, all of that. Do you have a recommendation, or do you have best practices for each of those? Or more, what I'm also specifically interested in is mid-range people, not necessarily lifelong learning, which I love the name change, mostly because my dad refuses to join the senior center because he doesn't like to consider himself a senior. I'm like, it's not the same thing that you're thinking. It's great and fun. But the age demographic between older than teen, but under the senior or under the lifelong learning. Is there a specific strategy that you've seen has been effective in capturing that group that doesn't necessarily only apply to the children, but actually those adults?
Yeah, I mean, the point you make is that in recreation, the bulk of revenue is coming in from kids and from older adults. That is just where the bulk is. In the middle, the one area that seems to maybe be generating revenue, or the two areas, are going to be either parent-child activities or it's going to be sports leagues or things like that. The point you're asking is, so how actually do we reach audiences we're not reaching right now? Because one of the things you heard me say was, listen to your best customers and help them out. But you're right, we also need to be looking at audiences not being served. One of the things that I teach is a model that takes people through the process of doing that needs assessment so that you can decide where it is best to allocate your time and energy. Because you don't want to just pick a demographic you're going to go after because you feel that's important. You pick one that you think you're going to get a good return on. And so there's multiple demographics, and you're right, that middle group is the hardest group to sell. And I think you just need to have a process that actually walks you through the steps and sets guidelines that help you determine if it's going to be worth spending money on this. And then if you decide, yes, it is, then you're going to dig deeper into working with that group, hopefully people who are participating already, who then can help you develop the programming and the marketing strategies that are going to bring people in who aren't coming right now. It's a very short explanation to a very long discussion, but there are strategies to do this.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And then the last question I have is when you mentioned this briefly in the presentation about how when somebody leaves one activity, they should know what their next point of engagement is. Does that typically happen through paper or verbally or just a follow-up email? What is the best way of capturing that? Because we have our summer program series or what was neighborhood events, now summer program series. And, for us, we have that pamphlet that we hand out, but I feel like that could technically be handed out at any of the summer classes that we offer outside of just the summer events.
Well, what I was talking about was the concept of, because someone takes X, what are they most likely to take next? And so what your data, your registration data tells you this. Because, for example, if all of us right now took a swimming class and then we looked at that data and we looked at me and we said, what else did people sign up for that I didn't sign up for? And let's say that 95% of the people who signed up for swimming signed up for ballroom dancing, but I didn't. Then the assumption would be you ought to chase me on ballroom dancing, be it if it's by email, by a telephone call, by an extra pamphlet, whatever it might be. And so what I was speaking to is the data side of this that helps us determine what that next program is. And in some cases, it's obvious, but in some cases, it's not as obvious.
Excellent. And then my last comment is actually to the director. It would be great if we could put this back on the agenda again in a month or two, just to see how this has been incorporated into the department, and then also so we can get started on the upcoming year's marketing plan as well.
We'd be happy to do that.
Cool.
And before we end this item, I really just want to say thank you, especially to Greg. For those that don't know, Greg is on the East Coast. It's almost 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Oh.
So we do appreciate that. We tried to get you on as early on the agenda as possible. So
Thank you.
we appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, feedback points?
I do have one, but I'm sorry, I know you're going to keep you awake for 5 more minutes, correct? I'm sorry. You talked about the ActiveNet and used that to track, and I know we implemented recently, I believe, the ActiveNet. Do you have any other cities used it? Because all the things you talked about is all data driven, right? Either it could be a percentage increase, decrease in the printing, so that increase in the marketing, or 20% when you do the repeat, and all of those things all related to data. And we need to have a much more analytics based marketing, right? It's all marketing is all based on the data and where the segment is and kind of. So do you have any experience, or I'm sure that you will have experience with other cities which used actively on this ActiveNet software, and so that it can be easy for us to listen and share it? Just follow the best practice.
Well, I haven't personally used ActiveNet, but I'll tell you 3 things. Number one, it should have the functionality to track what promotion got someone to register. I'd be very surprised if it didn't. If it doesn't, I can teach you a way to do it that's very easy to collect that information. The second thing is, you are collecting registration data that is rich. And I can take your data once a year and analyze it for you and give you repeat rate, lifetime value, primary market segments, carrier routes, etc. So you might not have the tools to do the analysis, but Learn does, and that's part of your membership. It's free. And then the third thing is, I'd be surprised if ActiveNet didn't have certain reports. And I would argue that if they don't, then you should be asking for them, because the data's there, and these are not rocket science reports.
Yeah. Agree. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. So thank you again for taking time and also standing by with us through these past couple of months of transition. But we look forward to staying in touch with you. And I know there's a couple of offers and things that you had talked about for data analytics. So we'll hopefully be taking you up on that and also integrating these changes into our department to better serve our community members. So thank you very much, Greg, and get some sleep.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Cheers. Excellent. Now we are going to go ahead and migrate into the next business item, which is business item number 5, the Blackberry Farm Entrance Road Improvement Feasibility Study Alternatives.
Wow, I was going to introduce Melanie Salvador, and all of a sudden I get Michael. What? Who's good? Yeah.
Michael's first.
Okay. So Michael Zimmerman and Melanie Salvador from the Public Works Department are going to make the presentation on Blackberry Farm entrance.
Excellent. So while we're pulling, oh, we have it. Never mind. I was going to give some context, but this is great.
Good evening, Commissioners. Michael Zimmerman, CIP Manager for the City of Cupertino. I'm joined today with Melanie Salvador. She's the Project Manager for the Blackberry Farm Entrance Road Feasibility Study. This evening, we'd like to present the results of the study, explain some of the alternatives that we developed, answer any questions that you might have, and then hopefully we can get your input on a preferred alternative that we can share with Council on April 7th. Let me begin by talking about some of the history of the project. This project was initiated last year. It was proposed by Parks and Recreation to address some of the concerns they had with the entrance road to one of their major facilities, Blackberry Farm and the Stevens Creek Trail. The current conditions, some of the road is very narrow. It varies between 17 feet and 24 feet. It's used by vehicles, bicyclists, and pedestrians. And it is challenging at times when there's two-way traffic or when there's cars coming down and bikes coming up, or just when you're walking down the road and there's vehicle traffic. So some of the stated goals for the project, we're trying to make it safe for all users. So bicyclists, pedestrians, and vehicles. We're trying to encourage or make it ADA compliant to encourage people of all mobility statuses to be able to access Blackberry Farm and the trail. Again, we were trying to make it enhance the access to the facility. This is, Blackberry Farm is a very popular facility, used heavily during the summer, and that's when we see the most traffic and the most sort of mixed use between bicyclists, vehicles, and pedestrians. So the third stated goal was to improve the access through the park, basically the bicycle access. We're completing a sidewalk project on Byrne Avenue, which hopefully will help enhance pedestrian safety and provide a safer path to get to the San Fernando Road, which is the Blackberry Farm entrance. Next summer, we're going to be building sidewalks on Orange Avenue and improving the bicycle access and pedestrian access on that street. And so we think all of these will help promote and enhance basically pedestrian and bicycle traffic to the park and to the trail. So we're looking for just improving the entire situation. One of the things with the narrow road is the emergency access is substandard. They require a minimum of 20 feet. Again, in some locations, we're only at 17 feet. So in case of an emergency, it's fairly congested, fairly narrow, and difficult for emergency vehicles to traverse that road. So Public Works engaged a consultant, civil engineering consultant, Underwood and Rosenblum, and with the stated goals that I mentioned, they took a look and developed 5 individual options. And I'd like to discuss some of the merits and some of the differences with those options. I would like to point out that San Fernando Road, currently it's at a 10% grade, and that is not ADA compliant. So a lot of the options that we developed was to improve ADA access, and that drove some of the options. So what you see before you now is option A, I hope. Okay. Little bit hard to read. I apologize for the graphics, but it's an engineering drawing. So on the right, you'll see. Left side is Byrne Avenue. Right side is Blackberry Farm, and the retreat center is here. So with option A, you zoom in on that. So since the road is at a 10% grade, there was no way we could make it ADA compliant. So we looked at other options to get pedestrians down a compliant path. And so that drove a detached pathway or sidewalk. So not adjacent to the road, but separated from the road. As you can see here, this is sort of on the golf course side. They developed a 10-foot pedestrian path adjacent to the golf course, separated from the road. This had the benefit of saving a lot of the trees that were along Blackberry or San Fernando. It also called for a 10-foot shared vehicle lane with the bikes on the downhill side. So one of the major premises was anybody riding their bike down that steep grade maintains their speed, and they can outrun the cars if they really try. You would have a separate 10-foot uphill lane for vehicles, and you would have a 5-foot bike lane for uphill vehicles. So the thought is they're going slower uphill, so bicyclists need their own separate lane. Downhill, they could share the lane with the vehicles. This is option B, very similar to option A. Major difference is this is a 14-foot wide joint use pathway, meaning that it's pedestrians and pedestrians and bicyclists would share that pathway. The idea is the uphill bikes or the people that are not comfortable sharing the road going uphill would take this pathway in the uphill direction. And again, the pathway would be ADA compliant. We do have a shared downhill bicycle lane and a separate uphill vehicle lane. So major benefit here is you're not widening the road significantly. It calls for a small retaining wall, but since that's the bicycle lane, it's not going to be taking vehicle loads. So the thought would be that could be less robust than if it had to take full truck or vehicle traffic. So here's a color rendition. It's a little bit easier to see. Again, the yellow is the proposed pathway. The purple shows a little bit of the road widening, and again, Blackberry Farm on the right, and Byrne Avenue on the left. Okay. So option C. Oops, wrong way. Okay, this is a little bit unique and might be a little bit challenging for the bicyclists. Again, we're proposing a 10-foot wide pedestrian pathway detached from the road. We're looking for a 5-foot wide uphill bike lane, but on the left side of the road, not on the right side, so that's the challenging part. And they will be sharing that or be adjacent to the bike lanes or the bicyclists coming downhill who are sharing the road with the downhill vehicles. And again, uphill vehicles have their own separate lane. So this requires a little bit more extensive widening of the road. Combined bike lane and vehicle lanes is 25 feet. Again, that's up to 7-foot or 8-foot wide widening in parts of the road. And we'll go over a matrix in a minute where we can compare all these options. So you'll get to see what's, be able to do a side-by-side comparison. Is that option D? Okay. So option D was our out-of-the-box thinking. Without widening the road, we were looking at adding signalized control on the road. So we could basically stop the flow of traffic in one direction. So they would share one lane, uphill and downhill would share, depending on how the signal is controlled or who hits the detector first. And the pedestrian and the bicyclist would get the other half of the road. So again, this would minimize the disruption or the widening, but it's costly for the signal. It's, if people notice that there's no other vehicles coming the other direction, they're going to go for it. So this option was not the preferred option. It was sort of the out-of-the-box thinking, right? And the fifth option, again, this did not meet one of the primary goals of making it ADA compliant, but this is your more traditional widen the road, put sidewalks in on both sides of the street, and have shared bike lane, vehicle lanes in both directions. This required the most widening, and again, it was the highest cost because of the amount of retaining wall that was required. So I should have stated this earlier. There's a steep drop-off on the north side of this road, so on the golf course side. So the further you widen the road, the more it drops off, the higher or the taller your retaining wall has to be, and the more fill you have to bring in. So that helps drive the cost up significantly. So this slide shows you the comparison between the alternatives. Let's see. Again, the first two were considered high safety, scored very high on safety. You're detaching the pathway. You're providing a separate bike lane, or you're putting the bikes on the pedestrian path itself, and the downhill vehicles would then share the road. The road widening was moderate to low. One of the favorite options was the loss of trees was significantly reduced in option B. Again, it was thought to be easier to construct because the retaining wall wouldn't be as tall. You still have some challenges out on the golf course side building the pathway, but most of the options had that issue. Okay. As you can see, alternative A and C had the highest tree loss. Melanie will speak to this in a little bit, but community expressed a large concern that you would change the character of that road if you eliminate a lot of the trees. So that was deemed to be undesirable. So we tried our best to maintain or reduce the tree loss as much as possible. So we really focused on trying to minimize the road widening, but also eliminated a lot of the cost. So. With that, let me turn it over to Melanie, and she'll give you a little bit of an update of the process we took to get here and what some of our next steps are.
Hello, Commissioners. The last time I was here, we were mentioning that we were having a public meeting and that we had on February 12th. And so I just wanted to summarize some of the comments that we got. We presented the same alternatives at the public meeting, and from the comments that we got, I also posted that on the website, which is www.cupertino.org, BBF Entrance Road. That's also posted in the staff report. And the summary of comments that we got is they do not want to widen the road. They do not want us to take out any trees. they do like the path to Blackberry Farm. They would much rather just have the path and not widen the road at all. And they would rather the bikes be kept on the road instead of on the path itself. And then we took a poll just by either voting with their hands or just voting by putting Post-its on the boards. Most of them preferred option A and B. It was like a toss-up in between the two, but most of them preferred B. And then another thing I wanted to mention is that we took this to the Bike and Ped Commission meeting, and that was on February 19th, just a week later. And same thing, they preferred option A and B, but they also would much rather have the Carmen Road Bridge than Blackberry Farm entrance road. And this, of course, is just the feasibility study. We're not proposing it as a project, but if the council or Parks Department or our department head proposes it as a project, then of course we'll take it to council. And then they also mentioned that they wanted, instead of a 10-foot walkway, a 12-foot walkway, and I think one of them, option B, proposed a 14. I think they were opting more for a narrow walkway instead, for whatever reason. I'm not really sure. And then on April 7th, just like Michael mentioned, we plan on taking to council the recommended alternative and taking from the public meeting, from the Bike Commission meeting, and from this meeting also, after you have reviewed all the alternatives. Maybe we can get some feedback from you on which you prefer. And also at the April 7th council meeting, we plan on recommending to council to dedicate the square footage that we'll use for the path that we'll use from the path from the Seifert property that was purchased back in 2015, I believe, and dedicate that as public right-of-way for the trail, as a trailhead. And then at a later time, the community development will propose some, I'm not sure what, something for the remainder of the property that will be left. So that will happen also on April 7th. I think that's it.
So as Melanie mentioned, in all three options, or all five options, the land required to build the entrance to the separated pathway is the same take. So what we're going to do on April 7th is propose a right-of-way dedication of part of that property to the city in order to preserve the right to build this at a future date. And that way, that frees up this property to be developed, sold, or whatever the council decides to do with it. And so there's a strong desire to do something with that property, better utilize it, recoup our investment, you name it. Everybody's thought of something to do with it. So. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Melanie and Michael, for coming today. This is something I think the property we acquired, the city acquired a couple of years ago. So it's great to actually be doing something with the millions that we spent on this. So this is really exciting for us, and also for the safety of the community members who use this, both car, pedestrian, and bicycle. For those in the audience, I will make my humble ask again for blue cards. Why is this important? If you have thoughts, opinions on which of these alternatives you think would be the best fit, please fill out a blue card in the front on the right-hand side. We're not that scary, I promise. But please, would love to get your insight and input. This is where these decisions are made, and sharing your voice now will help us make better decisions. Okay, so with that, I'll give a little time for somebody to come up and fill out a blue card. But otherwise, I'll open it up to clarifying questions from the commissioners, and then we'll go into full discussion. And I believe, Director, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are set to provide a recommendation to City Council as to which of the alternatives they should be using, correct?
Correct. That is part of the agenda item tonight.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think this really helps us to put in. And the question I have on it is that out of those 5 options, looks like if the community doesn't want the trees to be taken out, looks like it easily throws away ACE option. Correct? But the question is, when you also mentioned that the community wanted no road expansion, but also said they were okay with the option B, which also comes with some expansion. Can you clarify that one? I didn't get that exactly what the community finally wanted, because you said initially they don't want any of the road expansion, they just want to use it as such, but also mentioned that they prefer B. I just wanted to know which one is the final.
So that was kind of like a summary of a lot of the comments that we got from the public meeting. So one comment was, do not take any trees. One comment was, take as little trees as possible. So it was just, a culmination of those comments. In terms of which option they preferred, the preferred option was the B ultimately, just because it took the least amount of trees and it provided the access that, the Blackberry Farm entrance needed. It met everybody's happy place.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a count of how many people attended that meeting?
Yes, there was approximately, I want to say 22 or 23 attendees.
And most of them were very local neighbors, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw it. So, I mean, it's a good number. I still think it's a very small number in terms of input, but those who come are the ones who are most interested. And so that has value. I think sometimes explaining why we're doing things is valuable. Actually, I'll stop my comments and I got the answer to my question of the number. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions?
Yeah, I have some question. So for some residents, if they cannot make the community meeting, is there any chance for them to express their opinion? Is there any email address they can? Yeah.
Yes, of course. So I believe a lot of my information may have been on the public flyer that was posted, and that was posted on the Blackberry Farm Entrance Road website.
It was.
And how many emails have you got regarding the...
Oh, I got a few. People who weren't able to attend the meeting, I probably got maybe 5 comments. Yeah, and it was extensive.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any blue cards, so we can jump into discussion.
I put in a blue card.
Oh, I had it. I apologize, and thank you. Come on up, Dave. Please, you'll have 3 minutes up at the podium. Please introduce yourself and also share, if you are comfortable, if you are a neighbor of this proposed area.
My name is Dave McLeroy, and I live right next door to the property you purchased for $2.5 million. And I'm glad that you purchased it because I think you'll do some good things with it. But because I'm right next door, I would like to know what's being discussed, because I've heard so many stories, like a bus transit center, that'll never fly. Habitat for Humanity, that would fly, that's a great idea. but it's such a great place. There's 16,000 square feet there. And it could be something really signature for the community, for the park. So I'd like to be in touch with you on what you're doing, and if I need to cooperate on whatever your plans are, I'm more than able and willing to do that with my property. I'd just like to comment on the trees. I can't remember exactly all the species, but I know there's eucalyptus, cut it down. I know there's Monterey pine, cut it down because it doesn't have a lifespan. It's going to die and it's going to drop limbs and kill people. And that we almost had that situation on the golf course with 600-pound limbs dropping before the trees died. So I don't think the trees are really that big of an issue, and if we're planning for the children of the community, why not plant some trees that will have a lifespan and grow rather rapidly and look even better? I would hate for you to not use the best engineering because of the trees, because they really aren't keepers, unless I've missed some species. There may be some good species like oak trees, volunteers there. So that's my comment. I'm glad that you're doing something because it is unsafe going down that road and a lot of people use it, and I'm sure that most of your attendees at the public meeting, we were on vacation, otherwise we would have been there, were local people, because I don't think anyone else thinks about that road as much as we all do who live right there and see it. But I can tell you that probably 100 people walk by our house to go down that road every day. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dave. And we also have your email, so we can pass it off to our director for just staying in touch purposes. Excellent. And let me double check. Okay, doesn't look like we have any other agenda item 5 blue cards. Perfect. So we can go ahead and open it up into discussion from our commissioners. Are there any other questions? No? Okay, so I have one more question. Between alternatives A and B, what is considered to be the most effective for bikers? And what are the advantages and disadvantages specifically for bikers for A and B?
So it depends on your skill level and your comfort level of riding on the road. I would say option A, or alternative A, provides an uphill bike lane adjacent to the road. This is what is traditionally what people expect. This is what people are used to. And it provides a 10-foot pedestrian path. Option B puts the uphill bike lane on the path with the pedestrians. So the trade-off there is you've got bikes and peds mixing, not usually an issue. It's wide enough at 14 feet where bicyclists should be able to pass a pedestrian. But that's the primary difference. Skilled bicyclists will probably not use the pedestrian path. They're going to take their chances on the road. But if you have young kids, if it's difficult for you to climb the hill, you would probably take the path. So that's kind of the trade-off.
Okay, and then there was a comment which I just didn't quite understand, so I was hoping you could shed a little bit of light on, which was lose fewer trees and take out more of the golf course. Is that even an option?
No, not taking out more of the golf course. It's the less you widen the road, the fewer trees you remove. But the take on the golf course side is the same.
Okay, great.
There will probably be some adjustment to hole number 3, at least to the green on hole number 3. But in all cases, the pathway alignment and the impact of the golf course, we tried to minimize. So, but they would be the same.
Okay. And then can you remind us one more time between the first 2 alternatives, specifically what the estimated cost is, if there's any, or even if it's generic, one is higher, one is lower?
So they're very close. they're probably between $100,000 and $150,000 difference in cost. Actually, the first three alternatives, they were pretty much very similar in cost. So there's nothing significant between those three options as far as cost.
Excellent, thank you. Does anyone else have comments? I would like to see a little bit of discussion around the various alternatives. We can also knock some alternatives off if we are comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I know, when we were putting in the scenic gate on the other side, one of the ideas of that is to allow students to ride their bikes and go through Blackberry Farm to get to Monte Vista and Kennedy. So I think one of the comments in here is nobody rides through there. And I think some of that's people just don't know. Maybe they're not there. This is really intended to increase usage by students. That was why we did it. And improving this access has always been a sore point and something that we've wanted to do for a long time. So I think that's some of the background of why this has been on our plate for so long. And so that's just one of my...
Yeah, I mean, if you go out there after school, you'll see them riding down that road, and they don't ride single file, they ride four abreast. So yeah, it's challenging, especially if a car's coming the other direction. There's very low reaction time, and those guys aren't really paying attention. So that was one of the considerations was, yeah, it's a short duration activity, but it happens, and you want to make sure that there's, it's as safe as possible if it does occur, or when it does occur.
So we do need to make a recommendation to the city council. We can narrow it down. If it seems, is there anybody who feels that on the commission that feels that alternative E is an option to recommend?
No, I think maybe I'll just make a comment before we go there. I think when I look at the safety aspects, I think I'm sure that you did the due diligence to make it as high safety or not, right? Low or moderate. So I think given the uphill and then number of traffic ones, my thing will be anything which you feel that low or moderate, we should table it for now. On the other side, we should not consider. That's my recommendation. We should go on which is high safety. That's what I'm going to recommend. I know option A and B all looks like that's been rated as high, because at the end of the day, it's all you're doing it for the community and for the kids and stuff. The safety is the number one priority. That would be my input.
Yeah, I mean, I would be comfortable. Is that something reflective across the commission?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, if you could put the chart back on, just to be sure, it just looks like A and B.
The comparative one.
Yeah,
comparative
A and B.
Yeah,
I have spoken to some bicyclists myself, and what I've heard from them is that they prefer B. I mean, these are adult bicyclists, but that their input was very strong for B.
The comments we heard from the bicycle community would be, don't put us next to the pedestrians. They'd rather be next to a car and not share the path with pedestrians.
Well,
So the question-
and B is separate, right?
B is separate.
Right.
Yeah, it's a separated bike.
It's a
section.
separated bike
Yeah,
lane,
it's not
B.
all connected into one, correct?
No.
The B is
Or is it?
B
It
is
is all
right
connected.
next sharing with the pedestrians.
There's no even bump between.
No.
Okay.
I thought you had 10 feet for the pedestrian and 5 feet for the bicycle. Is that right?
But there's no barricade.
There's
in
no
it, so
There's no
barricade
barricade.
between
There's no
them.
visible barricade.
There's no barricade. I think what the overriding concern was the tree loss. So with B, you only lose 7 trees versus 21 with option A.
19,
So
yeah.
again, you had competing comments.
Yeah.
And
Which is good.
The people that basically walk the road were worried about tree loss. The bicyclists didn't want to mix with the peds, so they preferred option A.
Were the people who were the bicyclists, did they err on the side of more professional bikers, or were they daily bikers? Were they casual bikers, or were they I'm a race, I go far distances on my bike?
Well, it depends on which meeting. So on the bike commission meeting, of course, they preferred to be on the road, and they didn't want to share the road. They didn't want to share the path with pedestrians. They would much rather go up and down San Fernando Avenue as opposed to take the boardwalk and take the pathway. As opposed to some folks that were at the public meeting, they take it a little bit slower going uphill, so they kind of meander uphill to take a little bit more gradual way up. And so they would probably prefer option B, which, you know, allows them for a little bit more space so that they can go up the, you know, ADA pathway instead.
So one question related to it, if I may. So you also mentioned in the earlier that when parents go with kids, they bike, right? Typically, if I am there, I definitely will prefer to be along with the same pedestrian ones. The parents will walk and see my kids, and if they're really struggling, I'll push them or I'll drag them or whatever. It'll be helpful. I won't be comfortable into seeing the kids or what age on going along with those cars when I am just walking comfortably. I will not, right? So with that context, if it is mostly used, again, I do not know, I don't live in nearby and I don't know the thing. If a lot of families use that area, right, to go to the park and come back with the kids and even not necessarily professionals, but even anybody who really regulars, my preference would be like we should really along going with alternate B. If the data suggests that yes, parents go with the kids all the time and they bike it, that means I wanted to tag along with them. Somebody may be training. It'll be so uncomfortable to see them just going along and where the kid is going along with the cars. And you never know if they trip and what happens. They won't be walking with comfortability. So that's what my recommendation would be, if at all. B would be the one where it gives a safety. Because again, safety comes there, it's for the kids, that's where I'm kind of leaning towards that.
Are there other, go ahead.
Yeah, with B, nothing is stopping the professional bicyclists from going on the street. If they can do what they want to do, they know what they're doing, right? We won't have any
That's correct. They can still take the road if they feel safe doing so.
Then yeah, absolutely, I agree with Gopal. We should.
I do want to recognize the community member who spoke earlier in regards to the trees. I know that is something that if it was a point of high contention, they might not have been aware of the kinds of trees that were being taken down. Wouldn't necessarily be the long-term option for us anyways, and seeing as we've had problems for that. Do we know, in terms of the 21 trees that would be cut down in option A, what percentage of those are native trees? Are they oaks, or are they mostly Monterey or eucalyptus?
So I can speak to it because I've spoken with Tim Coles. So there's a mixture of trees that are out there. There's Monterey pine, just like Dave mentioned, blue spruce, birch, and some redwood, and there's a eucalyptus. There's a lot of volunteers that are out there that are growing, and there's a lot of vines that are out there that are growing on dead trees. So it's really hard to tell unless we were to actually do a tree schedule which shows exactly which trees are there, the diameter of the trunk, and the canopy. So unless we were to do that, then we won't be able to tell how, in terms of how many are little trees and big trees that are out there and that would get taken out. But a majority of them, like I said, are birch, redwood, blue spruce, Monterey pine. There's one huge eucalyptus one. Just like he said, I think Tim would like to take that out because it's a hazard. So.
I will mention that one of the reasons why we looked at expanding to the golf course side and not to the south is there is a grade difference between the neighbor's backyard and the road elevation. So a retaining wall would be required. They have a nice stone wall right now that would have to be removed and the road widened, and then a taller concrete wall built. And that would impact, I think, 3 or 4 large heritage oak trees. And so we were trying
which option is this for?
This was for all the options.
All of them, okay.
So that's why we looked at the golf course side versus going to the south. So we were trying to save the oaks that have been there for 100 years and look great and are healthy. And so when we looked to the south and on recommendations from our arborist, he was saying, look, a lot of those trees are junk trees. There's a eucalyptus. There's some pines that are stressed. He goes, you could probably lose those, and it wouldn't change the character of the road. You could mitigate by planting replacement trees that have a better chance of survival and would live longer and are more in keeping with the, with the area.
Just one question I want to clarify with all of you. The Fine Arts Commission was talking about some wall at the Blackberry farm, was that?
Yeah, that's down by.
That's in a different area.
Yeah, that's down by Captain Stevens Park.
Okay.
The playground, play area. And that's actually right at the end of this whole thing.
Okay. I just want to make sure
but it
we're
wouldn't
not taking something out
it's
when they're
actually
trying to
farther,
paint it.
because this goes down really to the turnoff.
Okay.
To the parking lot.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not taking off their fine art.
No,
where we
no, I don't think so.
build a safety place, a safe path.
No, because what they're doing,
That's good.
that's on the other side as well, just like
Good.
Do
Teresa
we,
was saying.
Mina, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I have some question regarding the alternative B. So,
We'll give them just a moment. Go ahead, Melanie can answer your questions as well. Mina, go ahead.
oh yeah, I have a question regarding the alternative B, and because it said only the biker in one direction share with the pedestrian, that may be a little bit confusing. How to guarantee only the bike go uphill can enter the detached lane? So, just make sure
The
downhill
biker can enter the pathway you're mentioning?
Yeah.
So,
I just want to know for the biker downhill how to make sure they won't enter the detached lane.
So there's no way to stop, the biker going downhill. Same thing of him or the bicyclist going uphill from entering the pathway. They can share the pathway, both up and down. There's no way to regulate that. I mean, unless you're sending a police officer at the top of the hill and at the bottom of the hill, there's no way to regulate it. I mean, it's more kind of advisory to say that, if you're not a skilled bicyclist, you should probably take the pathway. And if, naturally, if you're a more advanced bicyclist, you're going to take the road regardless.
So signage could help with that.
Signage could
road
help.
Road signs and even bike paths have arrows on them, so I can imagine that would help.
So is there any existing example, just like alternative B, just the biker go uphill, share with pedestrians? Is there any?
There's bike paths that I could probably find that are shared. And I mean, there's Los Gatos Creek Trail that's shared. There's several paths that are around the county that I can honestly say that are shared by
The
both.
Stevens Creek Trail right through Blackberry is shared.
Yeah.
It's shared, but that's both directions.
Yes.
Yes.
Allowed.
Yeah. I mean, the grade is not severe as it is here, but it is, I think there's a pathway right at the dam on Los Gatos Creek Trail where it's pretty severe, and that's also shared. So that would be an example, and I can get that for you.
Okay.
Given that, the bikers can go on both, on the pathway, both up and down, why are we specifically saying that those coming down would have to share the road? Why don't we just say, if you want to, if you're a professional biker, you do what you want, but everybody else just use the pathway?
So again, it's kind of what you're comfortable with. So the people that are comfortable with riding next to a vehicle, or if they don't see a vehicle, they're going to just take the road because that's the shortest distance.
Right. If they're comfortable with riding their bike and some kind of signage that says, at your own risk, go on the road, otherwise use the pathway.
The other thing
you
is,
don't want children to be, trying to go down the.
if you're going downhill, you have the speed, you can maintain the speed.
Yeah.
And most often, you're riding at the speed of the vehicle or faster. So
I can
it's less threatening.
I can foresee a couple of situations where some kid is, going out of control and gets in the way of the car going downhill. Something happens, he hits something, he does something. So why don't we just recommend that everybody go down the path? If you are a professional biker, you can take the road. choose what you want to. The children, please go with the pathway. It's 14.
I think that's a not necessarily from a build perspective, that's from an implementation and signage perspective, correct?
Yeah, we'll sign it, and people can choose to follow the signage
Yeah.
or
Yep.
make their
Yeah,
own
but just
decision.
the fact that if you signage it, I mean, we hope that most of the kids will at least use the pathway.
Awesome. So it sounds as though we have a general consensus, but to actually do anything, I need a motion.
I'd make a motion to recommend option B to the city council.
Second, any seconds?
I second it.
Excellent. We can go ahead and move to a vote unless there's an amendment involved. No? Great. Go ahead. Excellent. And with that, the Parks and Recreation Commission has formally voted to recommend alternative B to the City Council. We would like to remind the City Council how important this access point actually is. While we understand there are several around the city, this is a high traffic area, both for local neighbors as well as kids going to and from school. We want to try and make this as easy as possible for people to access their schools so we can decrease the amount of crazy traffic that is happening in the Monte Vista, Kennedy, Lincoln areas. So if, well, technically not Lincoln, but the Kennedy and Monte Vista areas. So this is a high priority for the commission. It is a property that we've had for a couple of years. So we would really like to stress to the city council that this is important to our commission and also to the community members as well. So thank you very much, both of you, for coming and for doing all of this. And yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to make one other point that you made and our audience member made as well, and that's, if we can decide on an option and move that property line so that the city is not held up in deciding what to do with the rest of the property, because, again, we don't like to have vacant properties around the city, and I'm sure we can put it to much better use, and that's better for the community.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Melanie and Michael. We really appreciate it. Fantastic. We're going to move to item number 6. That is to receive a presentation on the Senior Center's classes and programs, and maybe hypothetically a name change, as we heard in our previous agenda item. So please come on up and let us know what's happening in the Senior Center.
Okay, I don't think we're going to go with the full name change recommendation tonight, but as part of our constant desire to make sure that the commissioners are well aware of all of the programming that's going on, we will be rotating speakers up and having different presentations here. Tonight, Jason Pasali is one of our recreation coordinators, and he's at the Senior Center. Jason, take it away.
Good evening, Parks and Recreation Commission. I'm Jason Bazali, a recreation coordinator at what's currently known as the Cupertino Senior Center. I'm here to give you a brief overview of the classes and programs we offer at the center. The Cupertino Senior Center annually hosts over 250 classes with around 3,500 registrants for those classes. These classes are taught by up to 20 contracted instructors and another 20 volunteer instructors. Included in our schedule are art classes such as the Chinese brush painting pictured here, music classes and exercises of varying types, including the recently added chair volleyball, also pictured on this slide. One of the classes I'm excited about is the new oil and acrylics painting group. Until recently, a class was provided by Fremont Union High School District's Adult Ed. But unfortunately, they couldn't continue with that. A pair of volunteers that were in the class offered to facilitate continued paint sessions. We charge a small fee, and we're able to get these members out, active and engaged, back into our center. Today was the first day of class in this new format, and we're looking forward to its growth. In addition to our contracted and volunteer-led classes, we have agreements in place with Stanford Health, which offers their Matter of Balance program, Fremont Union High School District's adult education program that offers various additional classes in our facility, and Deanne's adaptive PE that holds 2 classes in our building for those with adaptive needs. Some of our classes pull double duty and act as performers for our center as well. On the left, here are members of our harmonicats and ukulele groups who hold class on Mondays and Tuesdays. We just nominated and awarded Delphine in the middle there, a volunteer citation from CPRS District 4 last week for her work at our center and in the community. She and her group perform 4 to 5 times a year for us and add a bunch of additional volunteer performances at local retirement homes or senior living communities. Delphine and her classes are really some of the great assets of our senior center. If you've been to Breakfast with Santa at Quinlan this past year, or the volunteer fair out here in the Civic Center, you've probably seen her and one of her bands play. She's everywhere. I've made this joke a few times recently, but we're pretty sure she doesn't sleep. On the right is our hula class, which meets regularly on Mondays and performs at a few of our events throughout the year, and also performs for numerous events out in the community. The major public event the Senior Center puts on every year is our Hidden Treasures fundraiser. Between August and mid-October, the center receives donations of household items, jewelry, kitchenware, and much more. Senior Center volunteers meet weekly to sort through the donated items, price, and clean them. In late October, the center opens its doors to the actual sale part of the experience, where community members from all over come in to purchase the hidden treasures we've collected. This event is a fantastic opportunity to engender our Seniors Helping Seniors philosophy. All proceeds from the event go to benefit at-risk seniors through our case management office and the Stay Active Fund, which helps Cupertino seniors offset the costs of classes and membership. This year, the event raised just over $15,000. Each month, the Senior Center holds at least 2 lunch programs, the large birthday bash celebrations, which can see upwards of 90 attendees, and the smaller Lunch with Friends programs that seat 32. Occasionally, we have special luncheons like the holiday ham in December as well. The birthday bashes involve themed decorations and meals, such as French-themed Chinese New Year or St. Patrick's Day coming up this month. Roughly 15 volunteers staff the kitchen and the dining hall during these events, preparing the food, decorating the room, and serving the patrons. Members who register for the bash and have birthdays in the month are celebrated with a song and specially decorated cupcakes such as the ones pictured here. Entertainment accompanies the meals at birthday bashes as well, usually of the musical variety, though we've also had McClellan Ranch staff come down and present talks on the wildlife of the Stevens Creek corridor. In 2019, we achieved 99% satisfaction rates for our birthday bashes. At the smaller Lunch with Friends programs, 5 or 6 volunteers prepare meals and serve the patrons while soft music plays in the background, creating a more intimate, friendly social outing. Evaluations from the past 6 Lunch with Friends have attained a 96% satisfaction rating. This is sort of brushing the surface of all the events and programming I oversee at the Senior Center. But everything here and more can be found in our bi-monthly publication, the 50+ Scene. Recently, the 50+ Scene underwent an expansive content and aesthetic overhaul, turning the publication from the image on the left to the 2 examples you see on the right. It now complies with the Office of Communications branding guidelines, and in general is easier to read and more visually appealing. Everything we've heard back from our membership so far has been positive, and we're on our 4th edition of the new format now, so we're still tweaking things to get it perfect, but we're quite happy with the product we've produced. I brought some copies of the latest edition today as well for you to look over. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, for giving us this presentation. I know a while ago there was a thought to bring the Senior Center Advisory Council into our commission, but we thought that's unnecessary given the amount of amazing things that have been happening there, and it's great to see that continuing and growing and expanding. I don't know if there are any, oh wait, let me double check my blue cards, but are there any clarifying questions from the commission before I move on to the blue card? And for those that are in the audience right now, if you are 50 plus and would like to speak on the Senior Center, please fill out a blue card up in the front on the right-hand side. But do we have any clarifying questions from the commissioners before we jump into the blue card that's here?
I do have one. So you said that FUHSD, especially on the acrylic art one, so they stopped supporting. Can you explain that?
So they still hold classes at the senior center. It was just the one class was going away, and they still wanted to get together as a group because they'd been painting together for so long. So we're making that happen.
Okay. And the other question, I think we brought it up last time, but it's related to any other. No, these are great programs. Do we have any collaboration with any other commissions, like FUHSD? Do we have any other part of the city organizations? Do we do any collaboration? Because I just see only the FUHSD as a collaboration.
So
as an external, but it says several external organizations, but I do not know, none of this program brought it up. So that's my question. Is there any other organization we partner with?
Yes. So it's not a commission, but the senior advisory board.
Oh.
We also we have a program right now, the Techie Teen program, which I think you've heard of, is a collaboration with the Teen Commission and our staff at the Senior Center. And then the other ones I mentioned were the Stanford Health. And
okay.
We also, the Cupertino Library Foundation does a film series on Tuesday nights.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. So we have one speaker for the senior center. Heather, if you wanted to come on down.
Thank you. Okay. I would like to speak on the senior center in that how much it offers to our senior, and they love it. I work at the front desk. I volunteer at the front desk, and I often hear people say who I call aliens because they are from other cities in the area, and they consider our senior center, and I'm sticking with that name right now, to be the best in the area. So I think we should put a couple of feathers in our cap because the programs, they like just being there and sitting around having coffee with each other and being there. So I wanted to point out just a few things. Looking at, besides what Jason said about all of our classes, inside the newsletter that or the scene that he gave you, there's a list of what goes on Monday through Saturday. And so it's really a busy place. These are normally not classes, they are just activities that are happening, description is given in the scene, and then they're further noted here. So if you want to see what day you're going on a trip someplace, it would be listed there. When you're playing bingo, when the film series is going on, you could look on this month calendar and see what you're doing. So, and I was asked to also point out, and they mentioned it at a neighborhood watch that I went to. There was one of our social workers got up and spoke about the activities that are available for seniors, and they were using it in the context of the neighborhood watch, that if you have a neighbor who seems to be older and isolated, mention to them about the social workers and the help that's available for these people at the senior center. So a lot of people that were sitting around were younger people, and they had no idea that the senior center had such a varied social work for people that are busy. I've lost my train of thought. So with that, I will end. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. So do we have any other questions or anything from the commission? If not, we can jump into discussion. I had two questions, Jason. One was around the trips. So I know that the senior center does trips. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We have a very robust travel program. it does everything from long trips to day trips. There's an out to lunch bunch that meets once every 2 months, I believe. And it's a ton of variety. They're always trying to think of new things to take our members out to.
Excellent. Yeah, I remember we got a couple of presentations from some of the folks who had taken these big international trips. Then there was the surprise trip, and people didn't even know what they were signing up for, which was the international trip that they had just decided to, which honestly is more courage than I have, to go on a surprise international trip. So I think that's amazing. Just, given the current climate of things, is there anything that's going to be affected by the current health care scares that we're having?
So
we do have information about the coronavirus impacts on the senior center programs or on all of the recreation programs. And I was going to give you that later on as part of the update. But right now what we are doing is we are offering anybody that's taking any of the Parks and Recreation classes, activities, events, whatever, if somebody feels as though it's not safe for them to participate in the programs, they can have a full refund even if they call us up at the day before the activity and say, I don't feel comfortable with it, and I've read this, and at this point, we've had a number of people, approximately a dozen people, that have canceled out of classes. And we've also had a couple of the ballet instructor asked to cancel the classes, and that was 4 classes, a total of 9 people in them. One person from the pre-soccer class, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people from ice skating have asked for refunds from that, and then a few of the rentals have canceled out. At this point, we are still discussing the situation. Obviously, it's ongoing, and we're going to do what's best for the seniors in the community. We still want to keep the doors open as we can, because we realize, especially with the senior citizens, that this is their opportunity to get out and not be homebound. And we don't know how long this virus is going to be in effect. So do we close the doors for a day or 6 months? Those are the discussions that I will be having with the rest of the department heads and the city manager's team over the next weeks as we move forward. But the biggest thing is we are going to make sure that the public is well aware of what we are doing. We are going to post information. The senior center has a very strong email list that they distribute information with. We will be using that to let them know what's going on at all times with the impacts of the coronavirus.
Thank you for that update. I know that it's being handled very well by our team, so I appreciate the due diligence and care that's being given to that. I noticed most of the classes here are daytime. Given the fact that we're trying to also encourage earlier seniors or 50 plus folk to attend, are there supplemental classes or things like that might happen after work hours for people who still want engagement but might still be working? And is that through the additional programs like FUHSD and the other Indians and things like that?
So that's actually an area that we are looking to expand, is our evening programming. We currently have a yoga class, another yoga class that kind of starts on the border of evening time, line dancing. We have two line dancing classes, and then about half a year ago, we added one of the Chinese brush painting classes to the evening as well. So it's an area that we're looking at expanding.
Excellent. I mean, the swath of activities is very broad, and I know that we're reaching a big segment of seniors. So congratulations on an incredible set of classes and programs. And I'm sure other commissioners have some thoughts.
Yeah, I have some comments, Jason. Thanks for speaking on my behalf. I need some early classes too after coming to work. Thank you. One thing I would really want to highlight, being in a couple of, especially on the CLF sponsored movie nights, being there at least 2 or 3 movies, watching with them, and You also talked about the cupcakes being prepared only during the birthday bash, but I think they do prepare popcorns and others as part of that one. And I did enjoy with them. And average, you get around 70 plus people coming on it. And people coming on Uber, Lyft, I think that's the biggest traffic on those days when we get it. And the way in which it comes, it's amazing. I haven't even seen, I'm just, maybe since I became a member, I need to price on that too. So, but it is the best one I have seen it. We have seen similar programs inside the library or other places, but that's so vibrant, so really everybody's on smile and coming back. And of course, I have to go a little early, otherwise the popcorns will be gone, so I need to go and do it. But it was awesome because they keep on serving and the people come and do it, and it was an awesome. And I think that atmosphere, I think you all create. As I said, I think as the public come and we reserved it, yes, there is no reason why this can't be the best one, and it is the best one. I see that people, and all those out of the 70 people coming from, many of them are from outside Cupertino, based on, because we started getting it up from them, okay, where do they come from? There are a lot of people are from outside, and they know that, okay, if at all one senior center I need to go there, I think this one. Really, really appreciate, from the entrance onwards, entire thing is so awesome. I really appreciate all the effort from all of you.
Thank you. It definitely has been a great program, and that's those are some of our volunteers who do the popcorn serving and all of that, and it's a great way for them to get involved too.
Any other comments? Final thing, as we continue the strategic plan for our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, would love to find more formal ways of making sure we're including the senior center and its members in the outlining and decision making that's happening around that. Not sure if that's something we could potentially include in your calendar, in your schedule of like a one day of give us your feedback, what is the most important thing to you. But I think that would be really helpful as we start setting that strategic plan. So hopefully we can see if there's something like that we can do together.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much for the presentation and for all of the amazing work that everyone's been putting towards this. Thank you, Jason.